The Monday after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Jimmy Kimmel outright lied to his audience about the shooter's ideology. When Disney and their affiliates decided they needed to take some action, the media and Hollywood screamed like banshees, accusing Trump of weaponizing the government. But do you know what happened that Tuesday that the media chose to ignore? FBI Director Kash Patel testified to Congress at an oversight hearing where Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson released more records regarding Arctic frost. Never heard of it? Not surprised, because it is an actual case of government weaponization by the Biden administration, not only targeting Trump, but using it to go after almost 100 conservative organizations. Since Kimmel is now back on the air, it's almost like his suspension was a distraction from the real scandal, giving media cover to deflect away from who the real tyrants and authoritarians are. There is fascism in America, folks, but it ain't MAGA. Rosie the Riveter here, dropping more truth bombs to destroy fake news and propaganda. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to get new videos when they are uploaded. Now, let's get into today's riveting topic. I'm sure you've heard something about the Jimmy Kimmel scandal by now. Some truths, some misinformation, and some outright lies. Here are the facts. Jimmy Kimmel made a statement purposely designed to mislead his audience into believing Charlie Kirk's assassin was MAGA. That was blatantly false, as was proven by evidence released by the FBI days before. Evidence the media tried desperately to cover up. Kimmel not only refused to apologize, his employers discovered he was going to double down on his accusations and even try to play the victim. It was at that point Disney decided to suspend him. Because the director of the FCC, Brendan Carr, commented on the situation on Tuesday, the left used it, as they always do, to call President Trump a fascist dictator who's taking away our freedom of speech. However, they sure don't care about freedom of speech and government intervention when conservatives are targeted. Let me give you just a few examples. Many still believe Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox News over the Dominion voting machine settlement, but that's just a convenient cover story. Democrat leaders were actually pressuring Fox News to remove the most popular cable news hosts of the time. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer of New York demanded Tuesday that Fox News stop host Tucker Carlson from releasing further video of the January 6th riot at the Capitol building. Carlson aired video of the riot Monday night that showed Capitol police officers escorting one protester, the QAnon shaman, through the halls of the building. Carlson also showed video of Republican Senator John Hawley of Missouri being escorted with other members of Congress from the Capitol, claiming the January 6th committee selectively edited it to target Hawley. Another Daily Caller article reported, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy gave him more than 40,000 hours of footage. Some footage showed Officer Brian Sicknick walking around the Capitol, allegedly after he engaged with rioters. Schumer said Carlson manipulated his audience. I don't think we've ever seen an actor treat the American people and American democracy with such disdain, Schumer said. And he's going to come back tonight with another segment. Fox News should tell him not to. Schumer then argued kicking Carlson off air was necessary to preserve democracy. Democrat House Leader Hakeem Jeffries sent Rupert Murdoch a letter to have Carlson silenced. Actually, Carlson was just about to air his interview with the former Capitol Police Chief, Stephen Sund, which would have revealed even more incriminating evidence about January 6th and what happened when he was fired. Interesting timing, right? Fortunately, Carlson re-interviewed Sund for his podcast. So, Kimmel lying to his audience about Charlie Kirk's killer being MAGA is comedy and free speech. Likewise, top Democrat government officials pressuring networks to silence Carlson is preserving democracy. But even the hint of someone whose job it is at the FCC to regulate public networks suggesting holding Kimmel accountable for his outright lie is fascism and authoritarianism. Get the game here yet, folks? Coincidentally, after 56 months, it was finally confirmed that 274 plainclothes FBI agents were in fact in the crowds on January 6th. Is this the real reason Schumer and Jeffries panicked, demanding Carlson not be allowed to show videos that expose the truth and the evidence of the January 6th committee suppressed and hid? In fact, Sun had now stated he was not told these agents were in the crowd. Why? Why would you not tell the chief law enforcement officer at the Capitol that those agents were in the crowd? Then there was Roseanne Barr, who was fired from her own ABC show for a joke about Valerie Jarrett, the then senior advisor of Barack Obama, which Barr deleted and apologized for. According to Roseanne, both Barack and Michelle personally called Bob Iger to get her fired. Roseanne is a comedian and was making an actual joke regardless of what you thought about it. Kimmel, hiding behind the title of comedian, was blatantly lying about actual news to persuade his audience. For progressive political pundit David Pakman, firing Roseanne was a good business decision, but suspending Kimmel for a few days is a hallmark of authoritarianism. Realize Roseanne was at the top of the ratings, while Kimmel is at the bottom. Roseanne made millions for ABC. Kimmel is costing them millions. However, Roseanne supports Trump, and Kimmel dehumanizes him. Remember when Elon Musk was the climate change savior with his Teslas? Then he bought Twitter and became Hitler's illegitimate son overnight? Why? First, he reinstated President Trump's banned account, which allowed the country to see that the media and the Democrats were once again lying about Trump's reaction on January 6th. Check out my video for those details. Then, and even more importantly, Musk released information to investigative journalists who exposed the censorship and targeting of conservatives to manipulate narratives and influence elections, all done on the behest of government agencies such as the FBI. Going back to Obama and his administration, his IRS director, Lois Lerner, weaponized the organization to target Tea Party groups as well as other conservative organizations, preventing them from starting chapters, growing chapters, and in some cases, harassing the organizers personally. But since this is about Jimmy Kimmel, let's look at his opinions on all this.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson. After all these years, they are parting ways, which means he was fired. I mean, that's really what parting ways means. Tucker couldn't be reached for comment. He's already on a plane to Moscow to meet with his manager. But what a shock. I mean, what an absolutely delightful shock this is. Sadly, he's probably not done poisoning old people's brains. The question now is, where will he do it next? Will he go to OAN? Will he go to Newsmax? Will he crawl back up Satan's fiery beehole from whence he came? We don't know. One of the most despicable mother Tuckers ever to appear on American television. On the subject of terrible things posted online, the biggest story of the day today was Roseanne. Roseanne, you're not going to believe this, but she tweeted something outrageous. I know, yeah, right. The president did it too. It's crazy. Anyway, ABC decided to cancel their highest-rated show, Roseanne, following a tweet in which Roseanne compared an African-American woman, a former advisor to President Obama, to an ape, which did not sit well with ABC management or anyone with a brain, really. So they announced that this first season of the show is also its last. Trump has been suspended from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even Snapchat. But don't worry, Mr. President, there are still plenty of apps you do have access to. You still have Spotify to drown out the sound of millions of people cheering as you leave. You still have Pet Finder since you're on the outs with Mike Pence. You have Cameo, which will soon be your primary source of income. You can still play Among Us, a game where everyone accuses each other of being against them. You'd love it. You could play Pokemon Go. You and Donnie Jr. can hunt Pikachus together. And when no one else wants you, don't forget, there's always your old friend, the Domino's Pizza Tracker. Not only did Trump get banned from Twitter, Google, Apple, and Amazon removed the Parler app from their platforms. Parler is where all the right-wingers gather to post QAnon nonsense and misspell the word parlor. Trumpers are complaining bitterly that they're being silenced. In fact, they won't shut up about being silenced. On their 3 propaganda TV networks, on 1,000 conservative radio shows, all over the internet, they are screaming about being silenced. They won't be silent about being silenced. Our co-president, Elon Musk, sent a SpaceX vehicle to bring the astronauts back, and when they landed, he fired them immediately upon landing. Tesla stock is way down, almost disastrously so. People have been vandalizing Tesla vehicles, new Tesla vehicles. Please don't vandalize, don't ever vandalize Tesla vehicles. And so...
Now let's look at the media's reaction regarding conservatives being censored.
You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation out there.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
There are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda, and whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
If people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block. It's really hard to govern today.
This is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site. It is a matter of safety and corporate accountability.
The First Amendment is not absolute. It does not protect any single thing anyone says. And there are limits, and that's important. And what this committee has been trying to do for the last year and a half is to chill the federal government from monitoring what is going on social media.
When you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very, very clearly incitement of violence. Very clearly incitement of violence. I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't.
So my biggest concern is that your view has the First Amendment hamstringing the government in significant ways.
The vast majority of people can agree that disinformation about, let's say, the pandemic is unhealthy. It's harmful. So how can that harm be reduced? Well, big tech platforms say they are removing lies about vaccines and stamping out Stop the Steal BS and QAnon cult content. Now, do these private companies have too much power? Sure. And many people would say yes, of course they do. But reducing a liar's reach is not the same as censoring freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is different than freedom of reach. And algorithmic reach is part of the problem.
ABC made the announcement Kimmel would indeed be taken off the air indefinitely. And this is just the latest chapter in Donald Trump's ongoing campaign to crack down on free speech, dominate the media, and essentially render the First Amendment meaningless. So it was for the journeyman cable news host Tucker Carlson, just fired from his third network. He believed he could say anything, no matter how vile, no matter how disgusting, no matter how offensive, no matter how dehumanizing or belittling. And if you act like a sociopath over and over and over and over, you will become unpopular on the national stage. That's just like a basic principle. Over time, probably not going to work out well for you in the long run. Eventually, people will be rightly offended, disgusted by it.
I've got so many more examples of hypocrisy I could show you, but I think you get the picture. Kimmel's ratings among his primary demographic, 18 to 35-year-olds, is horrible, as is with all the late-night talk shows. This is actually costing the networks millions, which is why CBS did not renew Stephen Colbert's contract. So who is watching them? Boomers and Gen X. This past year, many have noticed those protesting, whether it be immigration, Doge, Kimmel's suspension, or Trump's crackdown on crime, or just Trump himself, are primarily older white liberals. It's the demographic that still watches Kimmel and the other late-night shows, and I think there is a connection. Here's what I've perceived. When Rush Limbaugh took to the national airwaves in 1988, he became an instant sensation for boomers and Gen Xers like me because He was expressing what so many of us believed in but weren't hearing anywhere else: solid conservative values. However, in 1996, another portion of my generation became hooked on Jon Stewart's Daily Show on Comedy Central instead, a satirical news show, and it's where they got their information from. Stewart was funny to some, and he took advantage of that to push a political left-wing narrative, one that was often skewed, misleading, incomplete, and outright false. But he excused himself because he hid his deception under the guise of comedy and satire, an important description too many disregarded. In the 2014-2015 timeframe, the big three late-night talk show hosts, Jon Stewart, Jay Leno, and David Letterman, all retired. They were replaced by Trevor Noah, Jimmy Fallon, and Stephen Colbert, a Daily Show alumni. Other hosts like Jimmy Kimmel, who also came from Comedy Central background, were already established in their shows. Soon after the 2016 election, it seemed like all the late-night shows adopted the Daily Show satirical comedy news format with Trump as their nightly piñata. Comedy and non-political skits gave way to heavily biased news-filled monologues, peppered with throwaway taglines to appear comical, along with a highly partisan guests pushing their left-wing ideology, denying opposing views while hiding under the pretense of free speech and artistic license. Stupid pet tricks were replaced with dancing vaccine syringes. Karnak the Magnificent was superseded by distorted headlines and misleading punchlines, and the amazing Kreskin was dismissed for targeted political content. Thanks to Obama essentially repealing the Smith-Mundt Act in 2012, allowing media to push unregulated propaganda on the American people, left-wing Hollywood and media stomped on the gas pedal and never let up. Late-night shows were kidnapped by the deep state propaganda machine and have divided this country like never before. Remember, they eagerly interviewed Trump during the 2016 election cycle as they laughed and joked with him. But now they all demean him nightly as a fascist Hitler dictator. Which brings me to Arctic Frost. Do you see what was released the day before Jimmy Kimmel was suspended? More damning information regarding Arctic Frost and the Biden administration unabashedly weaponizing the FBI, or better known as fascism. Did you hear about it? If not, are you wondering why? When I do my research, the search engine results are usually flooded with articles from the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, the Atlantic, the Guardian, NPR, and all the rest of the mainstream media champions. I have to specifically search for other publications like The Blaze, Daily Wire, Just the News, Daily Caller, The Gateway Pundit, and the New York Post to get those specific results, as the algorithms are set to suppress them. However, when I put in Arctic Frost, no New York Times, no Atlantic, no Guardian, and no Washington Post, nor any other major news organization, which means they aren't even reporting on it. Why? I specifically looked for the New York Times, and the only article I found referencing Arctic Frost was from January of this year. But since I will not give them any of my money, I was only able to see the first 3 paragraphs. In what I was able to read, they carefully massaged and cherry-picked what was really being revealed, claiming Biden's FBI was doing everything right and taking extra precautions. The messages showed that FBI investigators took normal bureaucratic steps and precautions when opening an extraordinarily sensitive inquiry into Mr. Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Anyone reviewing the evidence that Senators Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson presented at the time would realize quickly that either the New York Times didn't even look at it or they were outright lying. The Times wants you to think that the FBI did its due diligence in opening the case, so all is well. But they aren't telling you the whole story. A document posted on Senator Grassley's site on January 30th of this year states, Internal FBI emails and predicating documents provided to Grassley and released jointly by the two senators showed Timothy Thibault, a former FBI assistant special agent in charge, who was forced to retire from the Bureau after Grassley exposed his public anti-Trump bias, authored the initial language for what ultimately became Jack Smith's federal case against Trump regarding the 2020 presidential election. Records show Thibault essentially opened and approved his own investigation. The FBI titled the ensuing investigation Arctic Frost. In a letter to AG Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel on April 7th, Grassley and Johnson wrote, "The newly disclosed communications provide more evidence that anti-Trump ASAC Thibault was the prime FBI official who opened Arctic Frost in violation of the FBI Domestic Investigations and Operations Guide's no self-approval rule. The newly disclosed communications substantiate Senator Grassley's February 3, 2025 speech on the floor of the U.S. Senate that said, in part, Thibault handpicked subordinate agents to conceal his role as the initiating agent." That's not normal bureaucratic steps and precautions, New York Times. That's an egregious violation of them. The letter also stated, "The newly disclosed communications shed additional light on the efforts by the Biden White House counsel's office to collaborate with and provide cell phones previously assigned to President Trump and former Vice President Pence to the FBI and DOJ. The New York Post had reported on this in March, stating, "It appears that the FBI did not require a warrant when it obtained the Trump and Pence cell phones, which were in the possession of Biden's White House counsel." An email with the subject line Arctic Frost Update 5/17/2022, Thibault notifies FBI officials that the Bureau had been given the cell phones and is working on search warrants to extract the data. Obtaining evidence in this manner without a warrant first is illegal, meaning the FBI collaborated with the Biden White House to break the law. So why isn't the mainstream media reporting this obvious infringement of Trump's and Pence's Fourth Amendment rights? Arctic Frost just resurfaced on September 16th at a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing with Director Patel, where Grassley and Johnson released more records. As reported by the National Review, "Now it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics," Grassley said. "In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under the investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus." The New York Times has not published one article regarding this new whistleblower information confirming the glaring evidence of lawfare and targeting the opposition by Biden's FBI. Neither has The Atlantic, The Guardian, or The Washington Post, as of the time of this video. Not one article. However, these four publications alone have produced 72 articles to date regarding Jimmy Kimmel, including attacks against Trump, Disney, and ABC affiliates, as well as claims his First Amendment rights were violated. Just like Kimmel outright lied when he implied the shooter was a MAGA supporter, the media is lying when they say no administration has ever used its power to shut down opposition. Not reporting on it, media, doesn't mean it's not newsworthy, and it certainly doesn't mean it didn't happen. Arctic Frost is tied directly to Jack Smith's investigations against Trump regarding January 6th and classified documents, which included the raid on Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago. I believe Arctic frost will eventually be connected to both the recently dismissed case against the alternate Trump electors in Michigan and Fani Willis's RICO case against Trump and his supporters in Georgia. With judges dismissing and overturning cases and charges against Trump, one wonders, is any of it real and legitimate? It is clear to me this was a coup by multiple people on multiple fronts against multiple targets for multiple years. This is treason. A week after the Arctic frost bombshell, on the same day that Jimmy Kimmel takes over the headlines again as he returns to the air, news drops that Google admits the Biden administration pressured them to remove videos and creators from their YouTube platform. The New York Times, The Atlantic, The Guardian, and The Washington Post haven't produced one article on this either. Remember, earlier this year, Mark Zuckerberg admitted on the Joe Rogan podcast that the Biden administration pressured Facebook to censor content under the guise of misinformation. The media ignores true, honest proof of the weaponization of our government agencies against their political opponents, otherwise known as fascism. This time covering it up with a made-up controversy about a hack comic who outright lied to his audience. What a convenient coincidence. When Google and Meta were censoring and canceling accounts, what was the so-called media and Hollywood champions of free speech doing then? They were mocking people who questioned COVID lockdowns and mask mandates and celebrated them losing their posts, losing their platforms, and losing their jobs. They were cheering governors who set up hotlines to report friends and family who weren't complying with the COVID restrictions, while calling Trump, Kirk, and everyone else in the conservative movement Nazis. They applauded the Obama and Biden administrations for pressuring banks to debank conservatives, while honestly believing Trump is the dictator. They dismissed, excused, and ignored Lois Lerner targeting Tea Party groups and organizers under Obama, just like they are dismissing, excusing, and ignoring Arctic frost under Biden now. So to those of you who are trying to jump on this argument and say, watch out, whatever you do to them, they'll do to you when they return to power, your words are meaningless, as they've already done it to us. They've already canceled us, censored us, fired us, indicted us, jailed us, and in some cases, bankrupt us. So I say to you, you should have heeded your own warning when we repeatedly gave it to you for the past 2 decades. Actually, Democrats have been using lawfare against Republicans for as long as I've been alive, especially against President Trump. Russia collusion, Ukraine impeachment, January 6th impeachment, which more evidence is proving was a Fedsurrection, and the multiple lawsuits filed against him right after he enters the 2024 election. New York AG Letitia James actually ran on the platform of specifically suing Trump. And when she won, that's exactly what she did. Arctic frost and FBI agents at January 6th is just scratching the surface of what we are going to find out about the Democrats' lawfare. We are now at the point that the only way to stop this madness is to make the left finally have to live under the same rules they applied to conservatives. The difference is, conservatives will do it legally, they will do it orderly, and they will do it peacefully. The left keeps projecting the right is preparing for a civil war. In a way, I guess we are. We are prepared to use every legal means possible to annihilate the Democratic Party as it stands today and the Marxist ideology that fuels it. No one is above the law, right? We are done playing nice with the nasty, and we are through being tolerant with the intolerant. We are done staying quiet to keep the peace with those hell-bent on violence. It is time to save the Union. This is not retaliation. This is holding the left accountable, using the standards they set. And if they insist on a civil war, fine. Just know we are using the weapons they designed against us. We are putting on the full armor of God, grabbing our Bibles and the sword of truth, And we will be warriors for faith, family, and freedom. We will no longer be silenced. We will no longer sit on the sidelines as Marxist ideology infects our schools, our governments, our culture, and our lives. The time of crime, fear, and intimidation running rampant is over. Law and order will be restored. We will be loving, but we will be bold, just as Charlie Kirk demonstrated. As I said in my last video, this is a spiritual battle, and the only way for darkness to win is for us to not shine the light. Morning has come to America, patriots. I'm Rosie the Riveter, and that's my 2 cents, but what do you think? Leave your comments down below. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting my work on Patreon. You can find all my videos on my blog, Liberating Letters, at thefaxpaper.com. You can also start your own research on the Fax Paper by exploring the thousands of links to articles I have, including those noted in my videos. Sharing the truth fake news propagandists won't. Investigate and discover the truth for yourself.